Well, a very good day to you, whether it's morning or your afternoon or your evening. Welcome to the Coaching Cafe. My name is Natalie Ashdown, and I'm joined by our resident HR specialist, Paula Jones-Hunt. And welcome to the Coaching Cafe, where today we're talking about best practice in building a coaching culture and addressing that comment that we hear every now and again, and we heard recently. How can we build a coaching culture when they don't even know the GROW model? So I'm looking forward to joining everyone and having this conversation with you. Before we begin, let me acknowledge the traditional owners and the custodians on the lands on which we're all meeting today, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and communities of Australia, and the lands from international communities around the world upon which you might be joining us today. We pay our respects to them and their elders past, present and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities from around the world. Well, turning to our topic today, our agenda, we're going to be thinking again about the coaching culture framework. We'll introduce you again to Open Doors Coaching Culture Framework. You would have seen it in our podcast last week where we dug into the coaching culture framework, but we'll put it up and have a brief chat about it today with you as well. And we will be talking about best practice in introducing coaching into organisations, and then answering this question, well, what do you do when they don't know the GROW models? So we'll talk about that together as a group. And as always, as I like to say, if you are new to the Coaching Cafe, welcome. We are all about creating a community, having shared learning experience and thought-provoking conversations. And you can interact with us by typing your message into the chat box, and we'll pick up your messages from there. And of course, to our regulars, it's wonderful to see you all come on the line, the ever expanding Open Door Coaching alumni. Welcome to you all, whether you've graduated from one of our programs or you're on the way to graduating. We welcome you all. It's fantastic to have such experienced coaches on the line. If you are here also to collect your ICF Continuing Coach Education points, then that will be available to you at the end of the session if you're listening to this live. And welcome, Paula. It's lovely to have you on the line, joining us to give us your insights as well.
Very happy to be here.
Well, Paula, we're talking about the coaching culture framework, and we introduced it to in our Coaching Cafe last week. And for those of you that aren't familiar, we do have the diagram up here. You can go to our blog at opendoorcoaching.com.au to see the diagram. And basically, we talk about the coaching cultural framework being the top half of the diagram, those things that are strategic. They're about the strategy of coaching within the workplace, the organisation's values and vision, how we link the organisational workforce strategy to the values and vision, and also how we build those organisational artefacts. And Paula, you've been involved in putting job descriptions together, performance reviews that have a coaching flavour and feel. What other kind of artefacts do you think about when we're thinking about coaching culture in the workplace?
I think it's when you think anything from the HR space needs to link in with that coaching culture. I remember putting together a catch-up conversation for managers at one organisation that was about, you don't have a lot of time, but here are some great questions that you can use in your quick catch-up. But it's even about when you're writing your policies and procedures. Sometimes it's about the language that you're using in those policies and procedures that and linking it back to that coaching space. There are some times when there's language that is legal that you have to have in there, but how you write those policies and procedures can really be linked to the organisation's values and the vision that they're looking for. So it's about thinking about it across all the breadth of the organisational artefacts.
Yes, thank you. And what we're particularly thinking about here is how does coaching work into those artefacts, not sitting out by itself, but it's part of the organisation values and vision. And we have this idea across the lower half of the diagram around the enablers, the implementation of coaching. We might do individual or team coaching. We might we might coach within a business unit. We might have people becoming internally accredited coaches, like doing our certificate 4 in workplace and business coaching, getting level 1 ICF accreditation. Or we might be introducing leader as coach or manager as coach or one-day coaching programs. And of course, looking at the evaluation and the feedback loop as well. And all of those things are actually enabling coaching within the organization. We put in the middle there the coaching principles. For me, it's like the glue that binds the whole pieces of the pie together, that regardless of what area we're working on in the coaching culture framework, we are role modeling the coaching principles. And Paula, I know that's a concept which is very close to your heart, because as HR people, we might not, or L&D people, we might not be able to do all of these pieces of the pie and influence all these pieces of the pie, but we certainly can be bringing through our coaching principles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've worked in organizations who didn't even know anything about coaching. And what I worked on was, if I display the coaching principles, eventually it will catch on and we'll all be doing it, which is what happens. So if you're asking really great questions, people start picking up on that and going, that's a really great question, I'm going to start asking that really great question. If you're really listening, when people come to you, that people can actually recognize that someone is listening, because it doesn't always happen all the time. So if you are living, breathing, being those coaching principles, it does link into everything that you do.
Yeah, and you are influencing. So I remember many stories that you've told me, Paula, around you might have asked a great question and then somebody comes up to you like a week later or a month later or 6 months later and says, you know what, that coaching question, no, they won't say that coaching question, will they? They'll say, oh, you know, that question you asked me in that meeting, I'm still thinking about that actually, or I think I've found the answer to that, or that made me really stop and think. So long after the coaching, the question, not coaching question, but long after the question's been asked, even though they don't know it's a high quality coaching question, it's still making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they take that question and they ask that question of someone else.
Of others, yes, that's right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, spot on.
So it started with one person asked the question. It made that person really think and value that question, and then they use that question, and it passes it through without even knowing that it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're thinking about this question, and this visual, for those of you that can see it, just makes me laugh. We've got a lady who's like whispering to a gentleman that they don't even know the grow model. And he's like, what? I can't believe that. You know, so I just laugh when I see this visual. So now we're going to think about what we've been talking about. And sometimes people get overwhelmed with this idea of coaching culture because people don't even know the grow model. So to that, we're thinking about best practice here and those enablers. And as we've talked about, maybe you can just follow the coaching principles. As everybody knows, our coaching programs are linked through and accredited with the ICF, and we implement the ICF core competencies. So maybe you can focus on the coaching principles, or maybe you get to coach 1 or 2 people or a team, or maybe you get to talk to a specific business unit and just focus on them. Perhaps you're like many of the alumni on the line, you're actually becoming accredited in the certificate 4 in workplace and business coaching or the diploma. Or maybe you might be thinking about, well, how can we just bring those tools together in a one day? So best practice is look at where you can actually influence. So even if everybody doesn't know the grow model, look at where you can influence, as we've talked about. And I always, when I'm thinking about this, you know, where can we influence? I suppose our theme for today is let's not get hung up on, ooh, they don't know the grow model. Yes, of course, we want people to be using the grow model. We take our heritage from Sir John Whitmore, known as the grandfather of coaching. And I remember when I caught up with Sir John Whitmore a few years ago before he passed away, and I was asking him about the Grow model, and he said to me in his very strong English accent, he basically said, Natalie, anyone can read out the Grow model, but that doesn't make them a coach. And I thought, it's true, isn't it? Anyone can read the G, what's your goal or what are you trying to achieve? Anyone can say, what's the reality or what's happening now? They can read the Grow model. It's available. It's in the books that I've written. It's all over the internet. It's in Coaching for High Performance that Sir John Whitmore wrote all those years ago. But that doesn't make them a coach. So I suppose the message that we're trying to share with you today, and I'd be interested in other people's opinions on this as well, is we want best practice is to put structure in place, is to put the models in place that we are actually going to use across the organization. But let's face it, if the organization's not ready for that, or they don't even know what the Grow model is, let's not worry about that. Let's continue to do coaching and influencing as we're doing now. Paula, what are your thoughts? And let me put this quote up here for you as well, because I know you resonate with this quote.
Yeah, so this student testimonial came in, and I thought, man, that could have been my testimonial back in 2006 when I did my program.
Yes, we asked the student, how are you applying your coaching skills in your workplace? And they said, I'm using my newly learned skills as a HR consultant. I have changed my approach as manager with staff and the way I interact with clients. I now use the coaching tools rather than tell method to empower people to draw out their knowledge and come up with their own solutions. So it's saying, rather than telling them what I'm doing, I just use my coaching tools to empower people. Go on, Paula.
Yeah, and I know that when I thought I was probably all right as a HR practitioner before I found coaching. And then after I found coaching, I really hit my stride, because when I worked with managers and asked them great questions and got them to ask great questions of their team and stopped telling them stuff, it really changed that relationship and how people viewed HR in the organizations I was working in. And it really became a much better relationship model rather than a you go to HR and you get into trouble model. So when I saw this testimonial, I thought, man, that honestly, I hope for that person that it changes their life the way that it did mine. And I worked in lots of spaces where no one was going to, the CEOs were not going to just say, it's time we introduced a coaching framework. It wasn't in their repertoire to even think about that. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It doesn't mean that you can't be influencing. It doesn't mean that you can't create little opportunities. So the catch-up form that I created for managers, I was introducing great coaching questions, and I didn't state that's what I was going to do. We just did it. In interviews, we changed some of the interview questions so that we're attracting the right people. And it's just those changes that you start in one spot and then they get bigger. And what I like to do is to get people to see how effective it could be rather than trying to get them to agree without knowing how effective it could be.
Yeah, and I think that really resonates with me too, what you're saying there, Paula, because rather than trying to make them do a model in a certain way, what I'm hearing is you are doing the top three things, which is ask great questions, listen to what people have had to say, and demonstrate some empathy. And I know you've been alluding to this throughout our conversation so far. This is an article actually I picked up from Harvard Business Review recently, and it's just a good one actually. It goes back to the basics, and it's a good, great basic article about how great coaches ask, listen, and demonstrate empathy. And of course, shout out to What Makes a Great Coach, the book I wrote with Emma Doyle, the amazing Emma Doyle. She interviewed 500 of the top coaches in sport and in business. And her research that she did over 6 and 7 years came up with the top 10 practices. You can pick the book up on Amazon, as you know. But asking great questions, listening, and empathy are in the top 10 practices. So I was quite pleased to see that, of course, all of the recent research that Emma has done has backed up this article as well from Harvard Business Review. But Paula, I suppose the theme that we're talking about today is, yes, we want people to be using coaching culture, implementing a coaching culture. Yes, we want them to be using some structure, some frameworks, some coaching models that we know and love. But for me, ultimately, what are we trying to do? We want people to ask better questions. We want them to listen to each other for the answer, bring out the best in people, and demonstrate that empathy. What are you thinking? I know that this has been some of the principles you've lived by, particularly in heavy industrial coaching as well.
Yeah, I actually think that empathy is really important, is thinking about what's happening from the perspective of the other person. So it's not just thinking, okay, I can feel, it's not just about the feeling, it's about thinking about it from what's impacting that other person right at this moment. What are some of the things that might be preventing them from moving or doing whatever that needs to be happen? Or what might be the impact if you make, when you're making a decision, what might be the impact of on whoever you're making that decision for, and not just for them, but for culture, for your team culture, for organizational culture. So really think, so that asking the great questions to get the thoughts going, really listening in, so not finding the space for someone to really step into and think about it, and then connecting it to, and what does that mean for the person, for other people, for even for yourself, having some empathy for yourself around, I have to do this, so what will that feel like for me, and how do I want to be, and what does that, who's the person that I want to be. So I think, and they're not things that you have to you don't have to wait to start doing those. You can start doing them now. Yes, it's great if you have a framework. Yes, it's great if you get into those organizational artifacts and you can put all everything that you want in there. But right now, you can ask, listen, and have empathy without having to do any of those other things.
Yes, I agree with you. Thank you for pointing that out. And for me, I think the distinction here is that we can ask questions. Like, I'm thinking about even the work that we've done in mental health first aid, for example. We can ask questions like, are you okay, beyond blue, etc. Ask us to ask, are you okay? And we can listen for the answer. I think the distinction here is the third element, and that's empathy. Because what I see typical managers in the workplace, and let's face it, we were all there at one point, we might ask the question, we might listen, but then we are immediately going into problem solving mode to fix that problem or fix that or offer a solution or offer an idea. And for me, the empathy piece is just taking a step back. So rather than jumping into that space and actually solving that, so we've asked, we've listened, now we're going to solve the problem. So rather than solving that problem, just take a step back and maybe we say something like, wow, that sounds really exciting for you, or wow, that sounds really tough, or thanks, or even just, wow, thanks for sharing that with me, or whatever. We say something that acknowledges what the person has said. So we're being empathetic, we're actually hearing what they've got to say. And then we might, rather than jump in and solve the problem or give a solution or help the person move forward, we're basically asking another question. So it's like ask, listen, empathy, ask, not ask, listen, jump in and solve the problem. And I feel really passionate about that, actually, because the empathy allows us to go, okay, well, that sounds really exciting. Tell me more about that. Or what else can you tell me? Or how do you want to move forward on that? So we're giving that bit of empathy, trying to see it from their perspective, and then we can ask another question, listen more, I think. So more of a, a circular motion here than just, I'm done. Paula, how does that kind of those kind of thoughts resonate with you?
Yeah, I totally agree. And when I think about the mental health first aid, that empathy piece is, when you think about how someone might, someone talks about how they're feeling or thinking, and that really critical piece that goes, man, that must be really tough, or that, I can feel how difficult it was for you to talk about that. And in a workspace, thank you for sharing that really difficult thing that you're working through, or I can see how that's impacting you at this particular point in time. And I agree, it's a loop. You don't ask, listen, empathize, and then move on, because often in that empathy piece, it's an opportunity to ask more questions, to delve deeper into exactly what does that mean for you, and how are you, going a little bit deeper, because when you dig that deeper, that you find the gold down there, and it helps to give clarity for moving forward.
Yes, and I know I've been using these three words quite a bit actually, and I was working with a group of lawyers recently, and they went, "Well, let's face it, I don't really want to ask additional questions because I don't have time. I don't actually have the time to like empathize. I just need them to do something." And I'm like, yes, but you're also supposed to be a leader and a team leader and a supervisor and a manager. So without this piece, I get it. We want people to get on with it and smash out their work. But without this piece, who are you as a showing up as a human being in the workplace as well? And I don't mean to kind of get all woo woo on everybody here. I understand the pressures that people are under. It's just that if we don't do this, and these are the basics, it's going to show up down the line in terms of behaviors and performance and results and all of those kind of things. So stopping, giving the time, and this is not just, if someone's struggling, we really are focusing on here around, wow, I can see how excited you are. Tell me more about what you've done. So the exciting things that people are achieving, if they're motivated, less motivated, whatever it might be, we're stopping and pausing. And I think the other thing I'd like to offer people also is that this doesn't have to be, oh, let's book a meeting for like and talk about it for the next hour. We can do this in the everyday, and that's what we're really trying to focus on as well.
Yeah, I did an activity with a group recently, and I said, what if we did the whole grow in 7 minutes? Like
Yes, I liked it.
you've
Yeah,
got
yeah.
you've got 7 minutes, and then you have to switch over. What can you find out in 7 minutes? And I and
Mm.
it was really quite remarkable what people found out, and what options they came up with, and how to move forward. I think we think of these things as taking a lot of time, but it doesn't have to take a lot of time. And how often will you do, if you have a face-to-face meeting, the first 7 minutes, you probably talk about other things anyway. Why not switch out the other things you were going to talk about with ask,
Yeah.
listen, and empathize?
Yeah, make it much more productive.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So here, what we're the theme that we're going back to is, okay, the best practice is that we've got a structure, we've got all those elements of the coaching culture framework in place, including structured models that we're rolling out towards the organization. But ultimately, if we can get our managers and the people that we're coaching in the workplace just to ask better questions, to stop and pause for a moment and to listen and to demonstrate some empathy, then we really are well and truly on the way to building the type of culture and the type of interactions that we're wanting. And I can guarantee you that will be in line with the organization's values and vision, and what we want from people in terms of workforce strategy as well. So I know there's a lot of experienced coaches listening to this, maybe live or on your favorite podcast and streaming service. We really are coming back to the basics here. If people don't know the GROW model, we're not getting hung up on that. We're really just trying to encourage people to ask, listen, and demonstrate some empathy. And as I said, what makes a great coach has the other 7 top practices, so you can delve into those as well. Well, that is actually all we have time for this afternoon. Uh, we have been talking about coaching culture in the workplace, and many of you will know that our diploma of organizational coaching has the coaching culture framework as part of part of the actual program. You can also look at our certificate for workplace and business coaching that's coming up soon. We've got leaders coach programs, and we've got mental health first aid training coming up as well. Really, really popular. A lot of people that did their mental health first aid training with us over the last 2 or 3 years are coming back for refresher training. So refresher training is now available as well. We've been running that refresher training. It's been terrific to think about our experiences in our mental health first aid training as well. And if you don't mind, I'll just give a shout out to our Coaching Cafe for next week. I'm going to be joined by a really inspirational leader from Melbourne City Mission. And what we found is it's really important to have case studies about how coaching has been used within organisations. And so I'm going to be presenting next week a really inspirational case study. It's one where I think we'll start taking notes when we listen to this leader and the way that she asks coaching questions, the way she empathizes, the way she listens to young people at risk. They're at risk of homelessness and have got complex mental health issues. We'll get a lot of inspiration out of that. So join us next week for that Coaching Cafe. Well, everyone, thank you so much. It's been great to have you on the line. We look forward to catching up. We look forward to doing more ask, listen, and demonstrating empathy as we go along. And yeah, we look forward to catching up with you at our next Coaching Cafe. Thank you very much for joining us.